Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Baldwin. My name is Xenia Beltran from Polytechnical University of Madrid. The UPM is co-leader of these use cases with UCB and Verigen. Real-world data is generated by the data and information from clinical routine delivery, administration, electronic health records, social determinants, demographic data, medical devices, lifestyle devices, disease registries, and not from experimental settings. Increasingly, real-world data can be linked to more novel type of data, such as genomic also, or data from biobanks. And the idea is to support new developments or either biopharmaceutical products, new diagnostics or treatments. This information has the potential not only to enrich data for clinical trials and generate evidence. So-called real-world data is aiming to overcome not only this, but regulatory issues such as product approvals for diseases, okay, but also to inform and to support clinical trials, eligibility criteria, enrich trial populations based on diversity, as well as social context. In this context, IoT data coming from medical devices are also part of Internet of Things, called Internet Medical Things, and comprise medical devices, wearables, and apps that monitor patients' health and send health vital signs from patients to healthcare information systems or platforms as such, using the internet. This technology has the potential to increase real trials efficiency, improve the ability to support patients through remote monitoring and the patient journeys as such. Although this sounds really great, okay, as you can see in the bottom of the slide, there are big issues of this connected ecosystem, as also was commented previously in this webinar. Each of these devices are not only purpose-built, okay, but meaning that not only measure some specific information, like it could be glucose or activity of blood oxygen as such, but also each of these devices are connected to specific platforms that support the device. Integrating the device data to healthcare information and aiming and supporting decision-making in clinical studies, okay, aim to improve the care, but still is not easy to be integrated such the number of different platforms. So what is happening is that as data sources and number of medical devices increases, the number of information platforms also increase. As a consequence, the number of disconnected ecosystems also increase as such, having different levels of security, centralization, and access limitation. Also, disconnected traceabilities for analytics. So having these advances, okay, not only means that medical technology is better, it provides us with better tools and responsive care, but also it helps us to manage very sensitive data and health data when we are able to integrate it as such. So in this case, what we have done in PharmaLedger is that we have set together in a chained manner different use cases going from clinical trial consent to personalized medicine and taking in account IoT for decentralized clinical trial management. And the idea is that they have been created in a modular style, having a plug and play approach as such, and where each model can be used independently or in an integrated manner. With this, we have created an integrated blockchain approach, okay, that goes from eConsent to personalized medicine, being able to see the flow of the data through the blockchain, using the content in the different modules. And for example, no data is accessed on process in IoT or personalized medicine if it doesn't exist a current consent status from the patient saying that the data can be consent and can be used or can be processed as such. This is consulted in real time and enables to have the visibility of consent through the whole value chain in clinical trials, okay, and through the whole process as such. When we use the device data or when we use the clinical information or the health records from the patients as such. So we have blockchain over the through and over all the value chain as such. Having these models, okay, and having this approach in PharmaLedger has helped us to overcome several challenges. Many of them have been approached as part of the clinical trials, but besides those, okay, we also have been able to approach some other regulatory challenges, like, for example, the need of patient-reported outcomes or patient-reported experiences that are needed before many market authorizations, the need of reaching patients easier because we are able to measure their signs, okay, or information in the background with IoT or with devices, overcome reaching measurements of patients in real life, okay, breaking the limits of actual studies, collection manners, okay, to get data to be integrated for new studies or new diagnostics, and actually how to blend IoT data with clinical data to converge in care processes and research, okay, with a common data collection and processing, always in a consented manner. So it helps us to move from a study-centric recruitments or study-centric trials as such to more patient-centric approaches where we reduce not only the patient risk, we increase the quantity of dynamic data in a way, okay, that is always consented, and actually help, okay, the patients to access and to provide the data in a manner where these new tools also are put in place, like applications and devices, in a seamless manner and an effective manner to actually blend under what is called real world data as such. Why blockchain? When we say about the use cases that we're using and we're putting together to have the whole value chain of clinical trials or decentralized clinical trials, we are based, okay, we're based having as a mock-up an observational trial where several devices such as oximeters or pulsometers, okay, or wearable devices were able to be used, okay, by one patient, having an architecture of the blockchain, okay, that will allow us to see and have the visibility of the data through the whole chain as such. Through blockchain, we wanted to add features and enrich data to be more accurate, to have the whole traceability, and actually to have transparency and visibility through all the processes that involve a decentralized clinical trial or a clinical trial as such, taking the advantage of exchanging data with the IoTs and with clinical data. We are able to integrate and to have compliance and interoperability on selected standards, like, for example, in our case was FHIR standards for this use case, connecting data from different platforms, okay, and not only data sources, but also different organizations in a decentralized manner, while enabling to have unique information and unique access through identity management, not only for patients, but also for devices as such. So actually we were able to have this kind of connection of one patient to several devices in a unique manner, having a one-to-one with each of the devices as such. Overall, the blockchain tools can help us to automate these processes and actually to have the full visibility, introducing the transparency and trustworthy of the sources, with full provenance, including real-world data, while allowing generation of evidence and, for sure, okay, patient-reported outcomes and patient-reported experience that really complete, okay, the real-world data as such in a timely manner and with traceability when all these evidences were created. We're using this architecture of digital trust ecosystem, and here has been key to have the identity management, especially when we have included all the devices and the devices traceability. As a result, we had an end-to-end healthcare data space that really, through the prototype that we have built as such, okay, have allowed us that based in what is the data sharing unit technology of the blockchain, which is agnostic to the several blockchain technologies as such, we have used identifiers to create real-world data in a way that is not only operative, but also operational for the data spaces as such, and also within high interoperability. Historic traceability is provided, data provenance, and actually not only we can do so, but we can leverage other technologies like machine learning or analytics or artificial intelligence over the data spaces as the data is standardized as such. Besides, this is a new way to share data. And this technology is currently being validated with patients and investigators to assess the usability and the potential adoption of the stakeholders so it can be scaled. We not only want that, but we also want to offer a value proposition for the different stakeholders. So I'm not going through all in this slide, but also we would like to mention that in our use cases and in our validation, we're providing important benefits to empower patients, okay, as data owners, like supporting privacy, security, and actually permissioned access and use of data as such. Not only the data can be used for the current study, but they are also allowed to provide permission, okay, for the data to be used as secondary use for further research and actually improve new treatments and new diagnostics of the different diseases. So in this way, and by generated new evidence, for them that other stakeholders, like it could be policymakers or regulators, also can benefit from this because they can use this data and the evidences to have new policy making in healthcare, but also to have evidences that are needed to support this new diagnostic or new biopharmaceutical products as such. In my view, blockchain technology is not only a technology that provides security, but also and provenance, but also it supports the integrity of real-world data, which includes or can include a lot of information from IoT devices, what are aimed for safe, to have transparent data and enrich new data sets with not only clinical data, but with social data. And this is meaningful for any medical assistance of patients in the healthcare today. We are enabled trusted ecosystem for value-based healthcare as such. With this, I would like to give the floor to Francesca from Hospital Bambino Gesù, who will provide the perspective of the clinical stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zinia, and hi everyone. I'm Francesca Rocchi. I'm a pharmacist, a pharmacologist by training, and I work in Bambino Gesù Children's Hospital in Rome, which is one of the biggest pediatric hospitals in Europe. I work in the hospital department, which is responsible for the planning, management, and implementation of clinical trial conducted within our hospital. And specifically, I deal with the regulatory setup of the study themselves. It is a pleasure for me to participate today in this webinar and to try to make some critical reflection from the point of view of the clinical side regarding clinical trials and application of new technologies such as the blockchain. So let's start with the ideal world. What is our ambition when we talk about implementing new technologies such as blockchain in clinical trials? First of all, we need to consider that subjects enroll in the study. We would like that the patient recruited in the clinical study perfectly understand what they will do in the framework of the study itself. And we would like them to have completely understood and concluded the process of the informed consent in due time. Second point, we would like the patient exchange their data in a secure way and seamlessly. And last but not least, we need to ensure that ethical committees, legal office, data protection officer are comfortable with data transaction foreseen by the clinical trials themselves. So our group has been involved in two use cases, the IoT and the eConsent. Please just let me say that it has been a great work with the PharmaLedger team and the different expertise, and we enjoy a lot to work with the different expertise of the project. Trying to give a critical reading and trying to identify a kind of a lesson learned from the implementation of these two use cases, we believe that the main point to focus on could be the following. So, the importance to have a multidisciplinary approach. So all the stakeholders' voices should be represented. The patient participation, the final beneficiary of a clinical trial, of course, are the patient. And we should actively engage them in their overall process, starting from the very beginning. Regulatory, ethical issue, and data privacy are very important. Dealing with new technology and dealing with the world of clinical trials that are areas that are highly governed by precise and specific rules, we must consider very carefully regulatory and ethical issues as well as data privacy and all the requirements that the GDPR has recently brought. And then sustainability after the end of the project. These aspects has to be considered from the very beginning. So let's start with the multidisciplinary approach. When we move in the context of implementing a new tool or a new technology, especially as said in the framework of a clinical trial, we need to consider from the very beginning the active involvement of different stakeholders, especially because those figures could speak different languages, and it is not always straightforward to understand each other's needs. Who are those stakeholders? First of all, the patient, and having a real patient representative could help a lot in the project. Healthcare professional, researcher, principal investigator, or other professional figures working at the hospital clinical site where the research is taking place, it's extremely important. In the hospital, when we move within a very well-defined context with its own infrastructure, for example, the IT infrastructure, it's very important to deal also with all these professionals working in this environment. Another challenging stakeholder is the data protection officer. Considering then the fact that ethics committee and IRB should approve the clinical study, having their perspective and insight from the very beginning is extremely important. And similarly, the regulatory authority that has to ultimately approve the technology, or even just in the framework in which we test this technology, will certainly have some requirements that need to be considered right away. To deliver robust healthcare service improvement, it is essential that health information technology solution be designed by considering three core pillars of healthcare quality: clinical effectiveness, patient safety, and patient experience. These require multidisciplinary team to design intervention that both adhere to medical protocol and achieve the goal of effectiveness, safety, and experience. Tools such as, for example, the integrated patient journey mapping, intended to support the analysis of requirement as well as to promote empathy and the emerge of shared commitment and understanding among a multidisciplinary team, could be very useful. For example, this tool was used in a case study in the context of perinatal health, and this study demonstrates that tools like that could be extremely useful in order to allow the team members to consider the goal, the task, the constraints, and actor involved in delivery of this journey. Talking about patient, which are the elements that we should considering? First of all, specific patient characteristic. In our case, for example, we have to deal with the pediatric patient, so we have to deal with very specific requirement. This category is very fragile. They are not always able to provide their consent, considering their age, and this means that we need to involve also the parents or the legal representatives in all the path. As said, the tool of patient journey maps could be very useful. We need to consider all the patient's need, and we are developing, when we are implementing a new technology, the patient feedback is extremely important to test, as said from the very beginning. And also there should be always a balance between what we are trying to develop, what we are trying to achieve, and the rules that we need to apply with the final user acceptability. Very important to bear in mind is that if the new technology involve, for example, minors, as in this case, it is mandatory to have on board professionals who used to deal with them and that clear the different process and the different scenarios. As said, regulatory, ethical issue, data privacy represent very important aspect to consider. Regulatory agency, having them on board could be very important. In the framework, for example, of the clinical trial applying the blockchain technology, it could be considered, for example, to interact with the EMEA or with the national competent authority, also with the tool of the scientific advice procedure, which provide a very early engagement between the researcher and between the regulatory body. We need to consider ethical issue. Digitals somehow can divide. Enrollment always poses some criticism. We need to have flexibility to address different cultural background, and we need to have confidence to manage information exchange. And then the big chapter of data privacy and GDPR. As said, engaging early dialogue with data protection officer is extremely important. In the framework of blockchain and GDPR, we need to identify the role of the parties, distinguish between the public and the private blockchain. Right to be forgotten has to be considered, as well as privacy by design. And then, last but not least, we have to consider that research project, as those one in which we are moving, should go hand to hand with product development. For that reason, planning procurement activities during the project is key, and also expertise to do so is key. An appropriate business plan should be also considered to make technology available after the end of the project. Thanks a lot. And then I give back the floor to Martin. Thank you.